Good evening and welcome to ITV News. This is Wednesday night's calendar.
Yes, and here are tonight's main stories.
I'll never give up. The father of teenager Andrew Gosden, who disappeared without trace 16 years ago, vows to fight on for the answers he needs.
People expect you to sort of got better and got over it and moved on. And you can't, because you haven't got a solution to move on from. There's always that big hole in your family life.
Also tonight, dirty cash. 3 criminals from Yorkshire who helped smuggle more than £100 million out of Britain have been spared jail.
Hospitals prepare for another wave of strike action as junior doctors walk out tomorrow.
We'll continue to provide the emergency surgery for patients who need it, but we do know that a number of people will have their appointments delayed.
Storm clouds at day 2 of the Great Yorkshire Show as farmers put their concerns for the future to the Environment Secretary.
And is the mix of sunny spells, showery outbreaks and gusty winds going to continue for the rest of the week? There's certainly a change towards the weekend. All the detail a little later on.
Hello, thanks very much for joining us. First tonight, and to one of the longest running missing person cases in our region. Andrew Gosden from Doncaster would have turned 30 this week. He disappeared from his home in 2007 and was last seen leaving a station in London.
Well, since then, there have been wide-scale searches and arrests, but what happened to Andrew has remained a mystery, and the intervening years have brought nothing but anguish for his family. His father, Kevin, has been speaking to Martin Fisher.
This is the last sighting of Andrew Gosden. King's Cross Station, September the 14th, 2007. That morning, the teenager left the family home in Doncaster, emptied his bank account and went to London. No one knows why. For his father, Kevin, it's a mystery that's haunted him ever since.
You're just thinking about Andrew all the time, every day, that it does really stick in your head. The date he went missing, birthday, Christmas, that sort of thing. You know, there's always that big hole in your family life.
There's been leaflet campaigns, age-progressed images and even appeals at concerts, but Andrew remains missing.
People expect you to sort of got better and got over it and moved on. And you can't, because you haven't got a solution to move on from. Very much still remember, you know, how it felt to hug him, what he sounded like, all those sorts of things that are very tangible. And yes, it's still, I only have to pause for a moment to remember that very, very strongly and clearly.
In December 2021, 2 men were arrested on suspicion of kidnap and human trafficking. Today, South Yorkshire Police said they remain under investigation.
People still regularly report information about sightings. What I would say is, though, sightings are very difficult. It's been 16 years now. It's difficult to know what Andrew might look like now. So the things I would always stress to people to think about is the things that wouldn't have changed, particularly if that was a person who had come into an area with perhaps an incomplete backstory or missing the sort of vital identifying documents that someone would have, like a birth certificate and a national insurance number.
Obviously, social media is such a huge thing now. So if someone's able to share an appeal for an older missing case now, it will get a much wider reach than posters would have done 15, 16, 17 years ago. And it could just be one bit of information or 2 separate bits of information put together that could help find out where somebody is or what's happened to them.
When Andrew was 10, he collected acorns and planted them with his father. This tree now symbolic of the years he's been missing.
In the offices down at Missing People, they have a big family tree, kind of artwork, if you like, on the wall, with messages to missing loved ones inscribed on the leaves, Andrew's being one of them. And it just sort of felt like a real connection there. There's too many names, basically.
This week, Andrew's family should have celebrated his turning 30. Instead, the search for answers goes on. Martin Fisher, ITV News.
Well, let's hope the family do get some answers soon. Next tonight, 3 people from West and North Yorkshire who were involved in an international money laundering network have today been spared jail despite smuggling millions of pounds of criminal cash out of the country.
Jonathan Johnson and Joe Emma Larvin from Ripon and Nicola Essen, who's from Leeds, were small but vital links in the operation, which moved more than £100 million from the UK to Dubai. Today they were given suspended sentences by a judge who said that they were exceptional mitigating circumstances in each of their cases. Lisa Adlam has the story.
Vacuum-packed, sprayed with substances including coffee and air freshener to avoid detection. Eye-watering amounts of illegal cash contained in supermarket bags and black bin liners. A fraction of more than £100 million moved from this country to Dubai, displayed on camera by a member of a network of couriers who smuggled it out. 55-year-old Jonathan Johnson from Ripon in North Yorkshire was another of those couriers. Along with his partner, 44-year-old Joe Emma Larvin, also from Ripon, on just one trip in September 2020, they took 8 suitcases containing £2.8 million. They were arrested at Manchester Airport in March last year. Single mum of 3, Nicola Essen, who's 56 and from Leeds, was another courier. She travelled from Heathrow to Dubai 3 times in 2020, taking with her a total of £6 million. All 3, with 3 others, were sentenced today at Isleworth Crown Court. Small cogs in a machine essential to the most serious organised crime, including drugs and people trafficking.
They are integral parts of those organised crime groups. They may not work for them directly. The money laundering is done by separate criminal organisations, but for these criminal businesses, these criminal enterprises, these criminal groups to be able to work effectively, they need people who are prepared to move millions of pounds in cash on their behalf.
The couriers were paid up to £3,000 to make the journey to Dubai. Nicola Essen had been driven by need and not greed, said Judge Sarah Paneth, struggling to care for her family after the collapse of her livelihood in the pandemic. She was sentenced to 22 months, suspended for 2 years and given a confiscation order of more than £13,000. Jonathan Johnson and Joe Emma Larvin too were worthwhile citizens who had lost everything through their involvement, the judge added. Mr Johnson sentenced to 12 months, Miss Larvin to 24 months, both suspended for 2 years. Confiscation orders made against both, totalling more than £14,000. Lisa Adlam, ITV News.
The government announced a new initiative to tackle economic abuse.
Yes, it's a type of domestic abuse where the perpetrator exerts control over their partner or ex-partner's finances, and interactive tools being rolled out to businesses to help staff spot potential cases. But there's concern over a lack of support for victims here in Yorkshire. Lauren Hall reports.
I ended up being 24/7 alone in the house and not being able to go outside, meet anybody or do anything else.
For 2.5 years, this lady was in a controlling relationship. Her husband took charge of their finances, leaving her dependent on him.
The money he was earning, I didn't have the knowledge of what it was, where it was going, and then we would be using my salary to pay all of the bills and buying the food and everything else, so I literally had almost nothing left every month.
95% of women who experience domestic abuse say it involved economic abuse. Over the past few years, a helpline for people in that situation's taken at least 39 calls from Yorkshire and the Humber. But often people don't say where they're from, so that figure's likely to be far higher.
The cost of living crisis is disproportionately affecting women right now. They're losing their jobs at a faster rate, so economically they're finding themselves in difficulty. They are finding themselves reliant in unsafe situations longer, and then they can't really move out of that if there isn't the support to provide going forward.
This centre supports women affected by domestic abuse. but there's a long waiting list, and it's the same across the country. There are calls for the government to invest more in these frontline services. On a visit here, this Treasury Minister spoke on the issue, as well as announcing a new interactive tool for businesses to help staff spot signs of economic abuse.
I've always said domestic abuse is everybody's business. And so with this economic abuse initiative, what we're trying to do is encourage businesses to play their part. But of course, the government is fully committed to funding services. And over the course of the Conservative government, we will have seen victim services funding quadruple. And that's a really significant investment.
Is it enough, though?
Well, I would always, I mean, look, I've worked for many, many years now on helping to tackle domestic abuse, and I know the pressures that we have of funding. We will do everything we can to fund services properly.
For now, though, they're focusing on the interactive tool, which today started being used at HMRC before being rolled out elsewhere. It's designed to guide call handlers and flag up potential cases of economic abuse. But even with greater awareness, questions remain about whether there's enough support out there for victims of economic abuse. Lauren Hall, ITV News.
This is Wednesday's calendar. Still to come on the programme, a royal affair as Princess Anne visits the new emergency department at Chesterfield Royal Hospital.
And we definitely saw some sunny spells in between our showery outbreaks during the course of today. Could get a little better tomorrow, but what about the weekend? All the detail a little later on.
But first, some more news from around the region. A 9-year-old has died after she was hit by a car in Halifax. The girl had been crossing the road on a pedestrian crossing at around 11 on Saturday morning, close to the junction of King's Cross Street and Park Road. She was with a grown-up at the time and was taken to hospital in a critical condition. A 53-year-old has been arrested and released on bail.
The former Huddersfield Town footballer Harry Toffolo has been charged by the Football Association over 375 alleged breaches of their betting rules. The charge relates to a period stretching from January 2014 to March 2017, during which time Toffolo was on loan at both Rotherham United and Scunthorpe United.
Sheffield City Council has scrapped plans for red lines along Ecclesall Road and Abbeydale Road. The controversial scheme would have seen parking in the area banned during the day. Instead, the council says it's looking at altering bus lanes and carrying out more enforcement with cameras and parking wardens.
Hospitals across our region are finalising plans to cope with the longest strike staged by junior doctors. The action will last for 5 days, and that's on top of a walkout earlier this month.
Planned surgery is being cancelled, but doctors at the biggest teaching hospital in Leeds say patients will still be safe. Our political correspondent Katie Oscroft, of course, joins us in the studio. How are our hospitals going to cope, Katie?
Well, Laura, first of all, by concentrating resources that they have got on the emergency department. Now, consultants are not involved in this strike, although industrial action for them is looming. So they will staff up the emergency department, which of course means as a consequence that many planned surgeries will get cancelled. But doctors at St James's Hospital in Leeds assured us this afternoon that if a patient needs urgent medical care, then they will get it.
We will cope. We're committed to provide safe services for our patients and our staff, and we're hugely grateful for those members of staff who have volunteered to cover the duties that would otherwise have been performed by the striking junior doctors. It's always a difficult time when we're in a period of industrial action, and you know, we're obviously keen, as everybody else is, for a rapid resolution of this.
So, Katie, just remind us how far apart the two sides are in this dispute.
Well, in the British Medical Association says the current 5% pay offer is not credible. The government says it is reasonable. Junior doctors want 35%. They say to make up for years of below inflation pay rises. Well, the NHS England gave us a statement today. It says this strike is the longest and most disruptive yet, but it adds that people should still seek the care they need as they usually would, calling 999 in life-threatening emergencies, but using NHS Online 111 for other health concerns. Now, this statement did go on to say we cannot continue like this. There's a major impact on routine surgery, but with the two sides so far apart, it's hard to see a resolution on the horizon.
Worrying. Yeah, thanks very much indeed, Katie.
Thank you. The ITV Evening News continues with more on tomorrow's strikes at 6:30. Here's a look at what's happening with Lucrezia Millerini.
On the eve of the biggest strike in NHS history, warnings of delays to thousands of appointments and treatments as junior doctors and consultants stage a 5-day walkout. Also, Europe experienced its hottest day on record as temperatures could creep close to 50 degrees. And
hey Barbie, can I come
Barbie on the big screen, the rebranding of the beloved toy, but will the movie be as big a hit? Join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
The Princess Royal has been to Chesterfield today to officially open the town's new emergency department. Hundreds of staff welcomed Princess Anne as she arrived at the Royal Hospital. Once inside, she was given a tour before unveiling a plaque to mark the occasion. Since becoming operational in June, the new facility has seen over 5,000 patients through its doors.
It's been probably 10 years in the making for me personally, and obviously several years of building to get to the point where we are today, but lovely to see it officially opened for the people of Derbyshire.
Really, really nice. I've never met any royals before, and she was so friendly and so nice to talk to, and she made you feel nice and relaxed. She was lovely. I'll never ever forget.
Now to concerns from farmers in our region that the future of the industry is at stake as costs remain high and subsidy payments from the EU are set to halve before the end of the year.
Today, the Environment Secretary visited one of our region's biggest agricultural events, the Great Yorkshire Show, of course. And as thousands of farmers descended on Harrogate for the occasion, our reporter Jonathan Brown asked them what needs to be done to support them.
It's a celebration of everything agricultural, a maze of show pens, produce and technology, but it's also a forum for an industry operating under a financial cloud.
We're all good to go, clear, and we're back on track hopefully.
An outbreak of tuberculosis at Rachel's farm in Ripponden was just the start. Rising costs meant she's had to diversify, opening holiday cottages to make ends meet. And while her prized Solaire cattle are on show again this year, the worries persist.
There's a whole lot of people considering the future. The smaller you are, it's more difficult to actually be able to think, what else can we do? At the moment, we feel like we're in a waiting game. And it does feel a little bit that time's running out.
For others, future prosperity is being held back by uncertainty. Lewis is a third-generation sheep farmer in the North York Moors. He says 80% of its income relies on EU payments, which are due to halve in December and will end altogether in 2027.
We've all known it's been coming, but government support, we're only just finding out about these new schemes now. We'll soon have no subsidy left, so it's at the point of if it gets any later, a lot of people are going to really, really struggle.
Do you count yourselves in that? Is it?
Yeah, definitely.
And it's that outpouring of opinion that comes to the fore at the Great Yorkshire Show, where thousands of farmers come together every year.
I'd say they're worried more than anything. They're concerned about the direction of future policy, about perhaps a lack of direction for future farming policy.
Perhaps the politician best placed to judge the merits of those policy changes is the Environment Secretary, today making the most of the showground's animals and their produce.
I've bought some meat to take to the Prime Minister's barbecue.
But before then, we offered a grilling of a different type on behalf of the farmers we spoke to.
Do you think you're doing enough to try to support the industry?
Well, the scheme that we had while we were in the European Union meant that about half of the money, and it's £2.4 billion a year, about half of that money went to just 10% of the landowners and farmers. What we've tried to do is to turn that on its head. And instead of just paying for people for the amount of land that they own, we are turning that into how can we help every farmer. I understand people are in this transition, but there is plenty for people to be able to access.
In the short term, some farmers have been telling us that could potentially put them out of business. Is that something that you'd be willing to kind of reconsider or have more conversations with farmers to try to get that balance right?
Well, I'd be surprised if anybody has to be put out of business because of the lack of being money available. There is definitely money available to support our farmers.
So as the debate over the future of this sector continues, It's hoped the concerns of those who make this event so special are the ones who can still help to shape how their industry can blossom in the years ahead. Jonathan Brown, ITV News, Harrogate.
So, as you saw there, another busy day at the Great Yorkshire Show, and you were back there today, weren't you?
I certainly was. I spent 3 hours in the ITV calendar tent meeting lots of viewers. It was great to see.
You're in ITV Yorkshire, calendar news, Great Yorkshire Show.
Well, like yesterday, people were having a go at reading the autocue to get an idea what it's like for Laura and me. No problem for this drama teacher who read absolutely beautifully. I was impressed. And the rest of the time, it was a chance to have a few selfies. Here are just a few. Oh, look at that.
Oh, dear.
Hello to everyone who popped in. And tomorrow, if you're going to be at the show, you're in for a real treat, because guess who's going to be there? Our Lara.
Yes. Oh, yes. I'll be there. Yeah, looking forward to it.
You'll have a great time.
Really good.
Now, Kerry, I've got a question for you, because one of the viewers who came into the tent, a man called John, said he's got a friend who's going on holiday next week, and would you create some nice weather for him, please?
I thought you were going to say that you told me off because I got it wrong.
No, you
next week, of course, I just order it up and it arrives. Yeah, probably better than this week, but maybe, definitely better than this week, and definitely better than the weekend for sure.
Ah, right. Yeah, so there we are, John, you've been told.
Yeah, the Great Yorkshire Show. This one escaped. Take a look at this photograph. It's a musical sheep sculpture, and it's part of this week's Sound and Art Project Heard, where larger-than-life sheep appear in surprising places across beautiful Kirklees countryside. And this one was spotted by Sandy at Eastergate Bridge in Marsden. And apparently they're just literally like a herd working their way to Huddersfield for the grand finale on Sunday. And also in the countryside, an amazing photograph of Mamtor in Derbyshire just as the sun was rising there, with the low cloud just lifting from the valley, and a big thank you to Cheryl Duran for that. So anyone doing something in the countryside this weekend might be in for a little bit of a shock. On Friday we've got quite a deep area of low pressure, and now it looks like by Friday afternoon some wet and windy weather coming our way as that low pushes its way northwards. Several fronts and the isobars tight, so wet, windy, possibly thundery on Saturday, and then as it nudges further north on Sunday, perhaps brighter but still very blustery. Why have we got the area of low pressure? Well, the jet stream is to the south of us, really quite unusual for this time of the year. That's what's giving us the unsettled conditions towards the weekend. But towards the weekend further south in Europe is extremely hot. They had their hottest summer, of course, last year. They had an exceptionally hot heat wave in February, and they could be looking at record-breaking temperatures. So these are the already temperature records for Portugal, Spain, Greece, Italy and Morocco, and they could be beaten by the time we reach the end of the weekend. It really is. I mean, 49.6 already, and it could beat that.
Thought.
I know.
Really scary.
Thanks very much, Kerry. Right, we'll see you a little bit later on. Now, the start of the football season is still a good 3 weeks or so away, but teams in our region are getting into the swing with a number of pre-season friendlies. This afternoon, Leeds United took on Pennine rivals Manchester United in Oslo for what was a first chance for new manager Daniel Farke to see his players in match action. Leeds came out 2-0 losers, but had decent spells of play, particularly in the second half. They'll now take on Monaco in York on Saturday.
The Wimbledon dream is over for Leeds-born tennis player Neitha Baines and her doubles partner Maya Lumsden after they were beaten in the quarter-finals. Up against the number 3 seeds, Elise Mertens and Storm Hunter, Neitha pulled off some decent shots, including this winning rally early in the match, but ultimately they came up short, losing in straight sets. Neitha and Maya were the first all-British pair to reach the quarter-final stage for 40 years.
A relay involving more than 5,000 people that has crisscrossed the length of the country to urge more action on climate change reached its end at Big Ben yesterday.
The Running Out of Time event began on Ben Nevis and passed through our region in the last 32 days of its route. The final baton holders reached Westminster yesterday for an audience with the Speaker of the House of Commons to ask MPs of all parties to be more ambitious with their net zero targets.
We cannot thank enough the people that have got involved in this relay, from schools to businesses, communities, individuals, charities and organisations. It's been phenomenal that they've taken part, they've showed us their projects. To be able to be a part of that and to celebrate the work they're doing is what it's all about.
It's been amazing to watch it grow, the interaction we've had from people, individuals, companies, projects, and they're just messaging us all the time, like saying what an amazing thing and like, can we get involved, like, or can we get involved next year?
We've got to take take action more urgently on climate change. And also it's a positive thing. The climate relay is all about everyone can be involved, and it's a joyful thing, and we can all do our part.
If we can move that baton from the top of Ben Nevis just by human power to here, surely humans have the capability to move the planet forward.
Time for the weather, isn't it? So let's get the forecast. Here's Kerry.
Good visibility on the horizon. TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Thank you. Hello again. Yes, it's been all or nothing during the course of this week. Some sunshine and showers, fairly active conditions, plenty of rainbows around, like this one in Thorn by Brian Callery, and even some Amatis starting to develop out of this cloud at sunset. A big thank you to Sue Bilcliffe for sharing weather photos at itv.com. So this was the scene so far today. Some morning sunshine and then those showers getting going for North and West Yorkshire, and then forming in bands and travelling south and eastwards throughout the day. So still the risk of a few over the next few hours, but generally becoming a little bit drier and clearer, and the winds a little lighter as the night progresses. But pushing onto the Pennines perhaps as we head towards dawn, still the risk of a few showers into the early hours. Rurally could get between 8 and 10 Celsius, but for most towns and cities 12 to 14 overnight tonight. Very sometimes for tomorrow, 4:51, and setting again around 9:32. Tomorrow overall drier and brighter. There'll be some longer sunny spells in between the showers, which will be more scattered tomorrow, hopefully a little less heavy compared to the start of this week, but there's still a risk of one. And temperature wise, it will feel a little better in the sunny spells, especially if you get a prolonged spell of sunshine. Could be up to around 22 or 23 Celsius. The average now is around 21. And then as we head towards tomorrow night, there'll be a little feature coming through during the early hours of Friday, but it's this area that's coming in from the southwest. So a dry start perhaps on Friday before turning increasingly wet and windy throughout the afternoon and the evening, and then that leaves us for the weekend with a blustery story with showers or longer spells of rain.
TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
So there you go. It looks like you've picked the best weather day of the week, Laura, to go to the Great Yorkshire Show.
I know, it will be great. And of course you're there on Friday, aren't you?
I'll be there on Friday, yeah.
When it's raining.
Not until
we'll
later.
Gloss over
Not
that,
until later.
Hello again to everyone we met today, and thanks very much indeed for watching tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.